anything good come out of Laredo. They used to say, not anymore. But there aren't a lot of trees in Laredo, so we cherish the ones we had. And I had this favorite tree. It was an ash tree. And it was great because it branched pretty low, so it was a good climbing tree. And I love to just climb up there and look at the sky through the leaves. It's a great tree. And I found out when I was an adult that this type of tree is considered a trash tree. That made me so sad. But they call it that because it grows really quickly, but it also dies pretty quickly. And the tree that I used to climb when I was little is in fact pretty dead, and limbs are falling off and stuff. So, but I thought it was a great tree because I got to climb it. I lived in Midland for a year and a half. I call it my time in purgatory. And near Midland, there's a town called No Trees. Y'all ever heard of it? Heard of No Trees? Yeah. No Trees is the name of the place. And then we lived in El Paso for a few years, not a lot of trees there. And so when I came back to Central Texas, I was so excited to see trees again. I missed trees so much. I went to the grocery store, and there in the grocery store, there was a little median island thing, and there was this big oak tree. And I got out of my car and I went, there's a tree in the parking lot of the grocery store. I mean, it was just so amazing. I just stood there looking at this tree, and people probably thought it was very weird. But I was excited to see a tree at the grocery store, of all places, just everywhere, trees. So I love trees. And we have some trees in our yard, and we try to take good care of them. We hired somebody to come out and take the ball moss off and trim them and all that. And the guy's walking around our yard, and he sees this tree kind of on the side, this skinny, spindly tree. It's actually a type of pine tree, which I thought was amazing to have a pine tree in Austin. And he looked at the tree and he said, now this tree's got to come down. It's not a player. I said, my tree needs to be a player? Can't it just be a tree? But apparently if the tree doesn't have enough sun and the other trees are crowding in, it's not a playa and it has to go. So away went my tree, and I was sad because I didn't know that a tree had to prove itself like that to live. But there we see it in the Bible, in this parable, that there's this tree, and it's not doing what this tree is supposed to do. It's not producing fruit. It's not a playa, so it's got to go. And the gardener steps in and fights to save this tree. And when I was in this parable this week, I was thinking about my friend Edna, just such a cool lady. I loved her so much. She was from New Jersey, and she gave me the ultimate compliment when I was starting out in preaching. She said, "You're all right." And for her, that was big. But just a wonderful woman. She was elderly. She had a lot of problems. She went into a surgery that she was not supposed to survive. Everybody was ready for her to die, and she didn't. And then she had another surgery, and she didn't. And she was ready to go. And she went into a surgery where they were going to remove her whole leg. And she didn't think she was going to survive the surgery. Pretty much nobody did, but it needed to happen. And she was ready, and she survived. So there she came to church in her wheelchair with one leg. She quit coming to church for a while because she said, I just want to stay in my pajamas. And everyone loved her so much, they said, come to church in your pajamas. And some of the ladies got her some real nice pajamas that kind of looked like a little jacket, and so she could come to church. But she kept saying, why am I still here? Why am I still here? Why hasn't God just taken me? I'm useless. I can't do anything. I'm a burden. Why am I still here? And we'd say, Edna, you're not useless. You're amazing, and we want you to live, and we want you to be here. But she was ready to go. And so I think about people like that, people who feel useless because they're not producing. And in the story, the gardener, who sounds an awful lot like Jesus to me, goes to that tree and says, oh, I see potential in you. I see hope in you. I want to take care of you. And he pleads for the tree, and he says, I'm going to take care of it. And I love that his solution is that he's going to put manure on it. You ever feel like God's trying to grow you by dumping a whole lot of manure? Sometimes, I don't know. But he gives the tree another chance. He gives the tree another chance. And this is our God, the one who gives us another chance. And so you can understand this parable better if you see the context and see when Jesus told this parable and what was going on. The people were grieving because some of their countrymen, some Galileans, had been murdered or killed, and their blood was taken and mixed in with the blood of the sacrifices. In other words, their bodies were desecrated. It was horrible, and the people had to watch as this blood of the people that they knew that died, and it was upsetting and disturbing, and they asked Jesus, why? Why did this happen? We know from the Bible that Pilate was the one who gave down the sentence for Jesus, but if you read the history of the time outside the Bible, Pilate was a bad dude. He was mean. He would do horrible things to people, and it was known that Pontius Pilate was ruthless. And so he had done this thing, and then in addition to that, this wall fell on these innocent people and killed them. So kind of like when we hear about these shootings and we say, why did this happen to these innocent people? And so all of this is on their mind, and they ask Jesus a question that we would probably ask Jesus if we had a chance. Why? Why is this happening? And then Jesus starts to answer. Now, I'm a huge Monty Python fan. And in one of the movies, there's this young man, and he's going to tell his story. The young prince is going to tell his story. And all of the villagers start singing the song. He's going to tell, he's going to tell, he's going to tell. And they're singing, they're all excited, he's going to tell. And the joke is that he never gets to tell, and he keeps getting cut off, and he keeps singing, he's going to tell. So when I read this, why, Jesus? I start doing he's going to tell. And then he doesn't really tell. He tells a story instead. He tells a story that shows them that all of us are going to be cut down at some point. All of us are going to die. All of us are going to be like this tree that isn't producing. The only reason we're alive, the only reason we have breath in our lungs is because somebody came and saved us. Jesus came and saved us. And so what he's trying to say is, it's not as important why they died or if they were bad or if they deserved it. It's important that all of you are facing this. What are you going to do with the life that you have? And if you notice, the Bible doesn't always answer the questions we want it to answer. But the Bible always tells us what we need to hear. And in this case, Jesus is saying, what are you doing with your life? Are you producing? Because God has given you this day. God has given you the breath in your lungs. What are you doing with that? And are you producing the things the world wants you to produce? Or are you producing the fruit that I want you to produce? Because the Bible says the fruit of the Spirit is peace and love and joy and gentleness and kindness. And Edna produced all that, even though she wasn't working for a paycheck. What about you? Are you producing what God wants you to produce? Are you using your life in a way that God is calling you to? This church is a fruitful church. A church with a lot of potential. And maybe it might not seem like it by the world standards, because your numbers have gone down quite a bit. I think you know that. I was one of the first pastors to be assigned, one of the very first, and I found out I was coming here back in February. And we had to wait a long time before we could tell anybody or do anything. It just seemed to take forever. And I didn't know why. Why did they make us wait so long? So when we were at annual conference, the bishop said, I want to tell you about how we decide what pastors are going where. And I started, he's going to tell, find out. And he said, and I think it's true for the bishop I knew before him, they used to start with the biggest churches. This is a big church, let's give them the best pastor first. They used to start with the biggest churches. But he said, what I do is I look at the churches, and I look at the most promising churches. The churches with the most potential, and I make sure they have the right pastor first. So you guys are seen as one of the most promising churches in our conference. Did you know that? And then they put me here. I don't think y'all know where I was before I got here, but I was not in a great place. I was in a church, I had been there 5 years, and it wasn't growing. And I felt like a failure. And I was facing some criticism and some self-doubt. I was at the point where about once a week I'd go and see if there were jobs out there that weren't in the ministry. Because I was kind of done. And I just felt like a failure. Because I couldn't grow this church. And when I talked to my leaders about, what can we do? We try things and they wouldn't work. And for 5 years I just kept getting that, well, if we had a man, maybe he'd be growing. And it's hard to wake up in the morning and go to work when it's like, here I am. So I was really discouraged. And then they sent me here. And then I found out that. I thought, I feel like that tree that somebody says, I see something in you still. So here we are, me and you. People see something in us. People think that we should be here together. And I'm excited about that. And I look at this church and I see the potential. It's exciting. And one of the things that just brought tears to my eyes, I went into the Sunday school room and there's all these sheets on the wall. Maybe you've seen them. There was apparently a gathering, and I don't know which of you was in on that. But let's think about what this church can do to be fruitful. And that was the question, how to be fruitful. And there were all these things on the list, and every page has a check mark of the things you chose to do. Now that's not so unusual. I've done that kind of exercise a lot. You know, here's what we're going to do. What I don't usually see is a church that actually does it. Everything on that list you have done. You decided you wanted to do Bible on Tap. You decided you wanted to do, have the coffee groups be out in the community. You decided you wanted to build a blessing box. Everything that you put on that list, you did. And I just went, wow, I'm so glad I'm here. That is so cool. But before I came here, I was reading this book, and it's a real short book, and I can get y'all a copy if you want one. The author is Michael Beck, and I got to hear him speak. And he took an old church and revitalized it. They revitalized it. And the title of the book is Deep Roots, Wild Branches. Deep Roots, Wild Branches. And he said, what people want is a church with deep roots. A church that has some history, a church that has some depth. But if you just have deep roots and nothing else, you're a stump, right? So people want a church with growth and with wild branches that shoot off. A church that tries things, a church that has life, that experiments, that reaches out to the world. And that is this church. I just think that's a great slogan for us, deep roots, wild branches. And so I'm excited about the kind of wild branches that we can start nurturing. One of the ones I've been reading about that I'm getting excited about is called Dinner Church. It was made up by Jesus, pretty much. They had church around the dinner table, and they talked together. Jesus did more ministry around the dinner table than anything, especially if you read the book of Luke. Jesus was always eating, apparently. And so we don't have a whole lot of room to grow in this space, but we have a whole lot of room over there. And we could do church around dinner tables with music, short sermon, and then talk about the scripture around the table. It's a way to offer a free meal to anyone who needs a free meal, but rather than just giving them the food and sending them on their way, it's a way of all of us who are hungry to eat together. And we're all hungry, aren't we? So I think about the potential for that idea. I'm excited to talk to you all more about it and see how that resonates. I had a dinner at the church, and I made chalupas because they're cheap and easy, and I've never seen people so excited about chalupas. So I'm like, maybe we need chalupas in church. That might be kind of fun. Mexican food seems to go well. But there's a lot of things that we can do to send off those wild branches, and if it doesn't work, we try something else. But we're in a denomination that's at war with each other, and I know I've thought about leaving, maybe some of you have thought about leaving, and then I just see these signs of hope, and I just think, I want to be here. I want to be here with y'all. And so I'm joyful about that. I want to finish the story about Edna, because I told one of the Sunday school classes last week, and I decided this is a story that needs to be told more and more. I was with Edna when she died, with her one little leg. I was with her when she died, and her family was around, and we were talking and laughing and telling stories, and she was really funny. But she started to fade more and more as that day went on, and pretty soon she was not talking anymore, and she looked almost like a skeleton. She wasn't moving, and we were just kind of waiting. And then at one point, she sat up. She sat completely up. She hadn't done that at all. I was like, what is she doing? She sat up, and she opened her eyes, and her face brightened, and she put out her arms like this, and she went, oh, and then she died. I don't know what that woman saw, but I want to see it. It's a woman who lived a fruitful life. And I'm glad that she lived long enough for me to see that look on her face, because I will never forget it. So may you be fruitful, may we be fruitful together. Amen.